Hello everyone, this is Christoph. Today I want to talk about eagle cameras. The topic is interesting because the most famous eagle camera is not belonging to or about Jackie and Shadow. They are in California in Big Bear Valley. That is east of Los Angeles and up in the San Bernardino Mountains, and it's about 7,000 feet up. And I pause on the live stream right here. There is a live 24/7 camera pointed at the eagle's nest. And right now, Jackie and Shadow have two eaglets that are about a little over a month old. And there are, as we speak, 34,000 people watching. So it's a big deal. It's a popular thing and interesting. And there are a lot of eagle cameras out there that you can find on YouTube. Of course, in America, we have the bald eagles, it's the big one, and we also have the golden eagle. Golden eagle is more in the west of the Rockies, and bald eagle is basically in 49 to 50 states. I don't think they're in Hawaii, but bald eagles are in every other state. So the eagle cams give people a view into the life of the eagles. Like I said, right now, 34,000 people watching. Jackie and Shadow are super popular on the internet. As parents, they're the only eagle couple in Big Bear Valley, and they last 2 years did not have successful hatching of the eggs. So 2 years ago, they laid a couple eggs, and they're not sure what happened, but pretty soon ravens got the eggs and broke them, and that was after last season for the 2023 season. 2024, they also laid eggs and sat on them for 30 days, 35 days. 35 days apparently is the normal incubation time. But after 35 days, there was nothing happening with the eggs. And when they did break open, people, eagle scientists could tell that they had been frozen at some point because the weather up in Big Bear Valley is the tough thing for these nests. So last year, Jackie and Shadow had no success. The year before, no success. 3 years ago, they did hatch. They did hatch one egg, and they laid two eggs. One never hatched. The other one did hatch, and she grew up and became known as Spirit, and could still be in the area. I've learned a lot watching the eagle cams, and one thing I've learned is that they hatch after, well, so they're incubated for 35 days, and they hatch, and then the eagles are in the nest for about 10 weeks. So starting around 10 weeks, starting about 70 days, 7-0, they are able to start flying, and it's called fledging. And so the first time an eagle leaves the nest is called a fledge. So at around 10 weeks, at around 70 days is when they are eligible to start flying. Now, talk about the history of Jackie and Shadow in a moment, but just wanted to look at a quick video because this is today. This is right now in Bear Valley, and there's weather, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Because normally weather can be a bad thing, especially if the eagles get wet. But looks like the weather's, other than being foggy, is not too bad. This is a video from just 3 days ago. Today's April 18th. This is an April 15th video, but I'm just grabbing it to just look at the backdrop here. From what I understand, a lot of waiting rooms and schools and a lot of places that have a big screen up on the wall like to show this feed, the Jackie and Shadow feed. It's on FOBBV, Friends of Big Bear Valley. It's their camera feed, and it runs 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It does have a microphone. However, in March 13th, there was a really, really bad storm that brought 2 feet of snow, 80 mile an hour winds, and that knocked out the camera and also knocked out the infrared light. Because at night, at least in the U.S., the cameras are able to put an infrared light on the nest, and you can see the eagles 24 hours a day. Now, FOBBV has a second camera. It's from this perspective off to the right and over that way. And that also has an infrared light. And what they've done is they've narrowed the beam of the infrared light to shine toward Jackie and Shadow's nest right here. And that gives us some ability to see what they're doing at night. Not quite as bright and as dramatic as when this one is shining there. So this is a video from 3 days ago. This is Jackie. This is Shadow. These are the two chicks, surviving chicks. They actually hatched three eggs. One passed away in that storm I mentioned. But Jackie is bigger, Shadow is smaller, which is normal for bald eagles. Basic explanation is the female has to lay the eggs, so she just needs more mass to do that. When they lay eggs, they lay them about 3 days apart. every 3 days. Male again is smaller. Jackie has a spot, a dark spot over her right eye, which is spread out a little bit. That's how you can easily distinguish her. Shadow has no spots on his head. Jackie has that spot. Shadow is sort of sleeker looking, as you can see here. Jackie kind of has more of a shaggy look and fierce look to her feathers on her head. Shadow is a little more slick back in his feathers. But just to get to Sunny and Gizmo are the names of the eaglets. These names were chosen in a contest. It was a charitable contest. If you donated $5, you got one entry. If you donated 10, two entries, and $25, you got 10 entries. These names had to be they couldn't be anything offensive, and FOPBV filtered the names to filter out anything offensive, and also they needed to be sort of gender neutral, right? Because that's another thing, we don't know whether Sunny and Gizmo are male or female. At this age, the only way to tell that is to doing a blood test. It's the only way to tell if the chick is a male or a female. Now, when they get older, they're able to tell other ways. And the biggest clue is if the eagle at full size is smaller than the mother and is around the father size, then that's a male. And if the eaglet is much bigger than the father and grows to be the mother's side, then that's a female. So that's the easiest way to tell when they're young, the eaglets. Again, this video is from 3 days ago, and I have it muted because, like I said, the microphone is knocked out. The second camera, which is about 100 yards to the right, does have a sound, but you can only in the distance hear the sound of anything, but especially the Jackie and Shadow doing their calls. This is Big Bear Valley Lake in the background here. When the camera pans back, you can see some nice mountains. There's a town off to the left here called Fawnskin. So if you ever want to check the weather conditions for the nest, you look up the Fawnskin weather. But yeah, so I am going to, now that we have the background there, I'm going to switch over to the live feed, and it's almost live. It paused because um, there is a fish coming in. That was the parent flying by. And you'll see here, Sunny and Gizmo. This is Gizmo. His beak curves toward the top of his head. This is Sunny, and I think Sunny's female. Her beak curves toward her eyes. So for me, that's the big way to tell the difference between the two eaglets. Um, Sunny is 3, 4 days older than Gizmo, and so she's more advanced, and you can tell the 3 or 4 days of development. She just he catches up like 3 days later to her, but yeah, you can tell. Now, one really great thing that the Friends of Big Bear Valley does is they have a Google document, and that is something that anyone can look at. And that really does explain nicely what's going on, right? So just anyone who opens the document, you can sort of the introductory information here, but then further down every day, and it's called the recap, but the latest one is live, right? So this says right now, Jackie's on the nest, and it tells you they underline the food deliveries, right? So 11:30 East California time, Shadow brought a fish at 11:36. So 6 minutes later, Jackie brought a fish. So like I said, I'm not quite live. So that was 12:26. So that is that food delivery. And it looks like I need to refresh because that is not on this list yet. There we go. So 12:25, Shadow brought a fish. So that's Shadow on the nest. S stands for Shadow. J stands for Jackie. And then this is an incredible document if you want to know about the Eagles' development. PS stands for poop shot. So what they do is they stand up, and even as a small chicks, they have an instinct to shoot the poop out of the nest. You'll see here, um, all this white stuff here is that was spattered all around the sides of the nest. Um, and yeah, and of course, as they get bigger and older, they're able to stand up more and sort of control it more. But again, that document keeps track of everything that's going on. I'll talk about pellets, has all of that exercising their wings, vocals, and so on. So this is just a great document to get at an instant. If you're wondering, hey, which eagle is that on the nest? You can open up Friends of Big Bear Valley's document here. Now, the way I heard about the eaglets was on the news. And the news carried that Jackie and Shadow's eggs were actually hatching this year. Like I said, last year and the year before, no eaglets. 3 years ago, Spirit hatched and fledged and left, and may still be in the area. So that was a success. Before that, it was 6 years ago that they had Simba leave the nest. So they've had eaglets before, but this is the first time they have two surviving eaglets this far. 6 years ago, Simba did have a sibling named Cookie, and there was a rainstorm when they were little, and these eaglets here, and unfortunately, um, Jackie does try to cover the eaglets during bad weather, but they did get wet, and Cookie just succumbed to the cold because it was rain and then it froze. So if you go back and watch videos of 2019, Cookie and Simba, you can see their feathers were frozen, and even Jackie's feathers are frozen. And unfortunately, Cookie passed away. Um, yeah, so sort of jumping around here, but that brings us to another topic of the eagle's nest. So again, this is my first season watching eagle nests. And you can see here this fish is still alive. You know, some pretty fresh fish that Shadow's feeding to the kids. But the nests, the eagles build them. They're normally about 6 feet wide, about 6 feet deep, and can weigh 2,000 pounds or more, so weigh over a ton. Now, eagles normally don't do much housekeeping, so like the bones of the birds that they bring and the fish don't normally go anywhere. Once in a while, they will clear out things out of the nest, but basically what they do is half the time they come into the nest, they're bringing sticks and fluff. So look at here today, you know, Shadow brought a stick, Jackie brought a stick, and then Shadow brought another stick, and so on. So they are continuously every day bringing food or nesting materials to the nest, and yeah, and that stacks on top of what's already there. So so there, yeah, everything just gets buried. I think the egg that did not hatch with Spirit 3 years ago is in the nest still. It's just further down. Um, and also, yeah, there were originally three eggs that hatched, and that was on the news, like I said. And the chicks didn't get named at first. So just sort of going back to the beginning of the history of Big Bear Valley, it's actually very interesting. There, these chicks, and this is on the Friends Big Bear Valley's website, but um, bald eagles were in serious trouble. When I was a kid in the 70s, because of DDT, bald eagles were almost wiped out. I think I read somewhere there were just over 400 pairs of bald eagles across the entire United States, and now there's many tens of thousands of them. One of the problems that DDT led to, it's a poison that kills insects. The dead insects get eaten by fish, and 80% of eagles' diet is fish. So if the eagle eats a lot of fish, and those fish ate a lot of insects that died from DDT, it was just a buildup of this chemical in the fish, and then an even bigger buildup in the eagle because it's an apex predator. So one problem was that the eggshells were too thin, and so when an eagle laid eggs, they would crack, and then there'd be no eaglets, right? So there's actually a pretty amazing video that BBV has a link to, but it's talking about the return of bald eagles in the 1990s to the islands west of Los Angeles. They had to go to great lengths. What they were so nervous about making sure the eggs hatched was that when the eagles laid eggs, then they'd have a scientist, ornithologist, an eagle person. He was at the end of a rope on a helicopter, and when the moment the eagles were off the nest, he flew in at the end of the rope. He took the two eggs that had been laid, put them into a pouch, and then put down two pretend eggs, fake eggs, for the eagles to sit on. They took those eggs back to the lab and incubators and everything, and made sure that those eagles hatched successfully, which they did. And then once they were happy, the scientists, they actually put a guy at the end of a helicopter on a rope and flew back to the nest and swapped out the egg for the baby eaglets. And the eaglets came back to their nests, and all of a sudden they had babies there. But it worked, and eagles were able to spread on the islands west of California, and then kept spreading further and further, right? So Big Bear Valley is east of Los Angeles, and San Bernardino's there, and then the San Bernardino Mountains behind Los Angeles there, 7,000 feet up. There all of a sudden was a pair here living, and the history covers it, but it's interesting because before the battle days, there were eagles in Big Bear Valley, but not many humans up there. There wasn't much development up there, so no one really like kept track. But all of a sudden, eagles came back, and they understand that the first pair that they saw was named Ricky and Lucy, and the scientists understand that these were descendants of those eagles that were brought back in the islands west of Los Angeles. So some of those descendants made their way east and up into the mountains, and that pair was called Ricky and Lucy, right? They built a nest. They laid, I think, one egg in the first nest, and um, Jackie was born in that nest. So I'm going to jump ahead to live here off the nest, but well, we'll see Jackie. Um, she will appear at some point, but the Jackie was the first eaglet born in a nest in Big Bear Valley. Once people started watching once people started paying attention. Now the way that happened was Ricky and Lucy, Jackie's parents, they built a nest on top of a dead tree, and Jackie well, the egg was laid there. And Big Bear Valley, their third grade class has a section on bald eagles. So every year they take the third graders out to the place. There's a place where you can use your binoculars or telescope and look at the various eagle nests. And they were there with the park rangers looking for binoculars at the nest. The rangers knew that something was going on in the nest, but because there were no cameras, they weren't sure. And the story is a third grader was the first human to lay eyes on Jackie. The little kid, was looking through the binoculars and saw a baby eagle, an eaglet on the nest. And so, because of that, for a decade plus later, 15 years later, the eagles are named in a naming contest that's open to the third graders in Big Bear Valley. So the third graders choose the names of the eaglets. This year, like I said, there was a charity event, and people could submit names. I submitted three. My names were Flash, Thunder, and Nova. Those are not the names that were picked, but what BBV does is they had a computer randomly generate a list of 30 names, and I truly think it was randomly generated because they published the list, and one of the names was Talon, another name was Tally, and one of the names is Cloud, another name is Cloudy. So I think that it really was randomly generated because a human would have not picked the sort of same name twice, right? They would have picked different names. They submitted these names to the third graders of Big Bear Valley and the fourth graders and the fifth graders because the fourth and fifth graders did not have that opportunity because there weren't eggs last year or the year before. So they opened up to those three grades. To be fair, over 54,000 entries were made. More than 54,000 names, but 54,000 entries. And the student picked Sunny and Gizmo. So, like I said, you can tell them apart. I think this is Sunny because of the beak, and this is Gizmo. And that's who won. Interestingly, over 700 people suggested Sunny as a name, so it's not like one person. But apparently, everyone who suggested the winning name would get a certificate from FOBBB, which is cool. But yeah, getting back to the history, so Jackie was born in the nest. Not this nest; it's a different nest. But while at the same time that Jackie was in her nest, her parents Ricky and Lucy were building a second nest. Apparently, bald eagles like to build multiple nests, I guess, as backups to the first nest in case something happens to it. And turns out that it's good they did because Jackie grew up. She originally was named Jack when they first spotted the eagle. Jack was a volunteer who helped with counting the eagles in the old days. And when Jackie was born in 2011, sorry, 2012. So the spring of 2012, they named the bird after Jack, the volunteer. And then once they later on realized it was a female, they changed it to Jackie. Jackie's nest was in the top of a dead tree, and shortly after she fledged and left the nest, a storm blew over that tree, so that nest is gone. But like I said, the parents, Ricky and Lucy, had already started building this nest right here that we're looking at with the camera. So that was good because now there's a nest for future generations. Um, they had other eggs, and so one thing I've learned with eagle cams is that it's dangerous to be an eaglet, right? Different nests have different things that happen to them, and in Big Bear Valley, it's cold. Cold is what kills the eaglets, right? So the next year, um, there's in the history here, Ricky and Lucy had eggs. Looks like they weren't viable. They went way past the normal time to hatch, and they think it was frozen, right? There was an extreme cold spell after the Eagles began nesting, so the generation after Jackie, the eggs froze the year after her. The year after that, in 2014, Ricky and Lucy had another two chicks, but they could see them on the nest with binoculars. But there was a 4-day major wind, rain, and snowstorm, and it looks like that storm took the two chicks. They survived. They did not survive the two chicks. So Jackie's two siblings there also passed away in the storm. The year after that, in 2015. Oh, by the way, in 2014, Shadow, who's on the nest now, was born. They can tell he was born in 2014, so he's 2 years younger than Jackie. But in 2015, this is where it gets slightly confusing, but there was another one chick in the nest that successfully fledged from by Ricky and Lucy, Jackie's parents, and we're gonna call him Beta Shadow because his name was Shadow, but different Shadow, not the current Shadow. So Beta Shadow left, and no, basically no one knows where he went, right? So they in the 2016 season. After 2 years of planning and fundraising, they finally got permits and installed this camera. So it's the 2016 season. So this is the 10th year of the camera on the nest. But Big Bear Valley friends installed the camera. Now, it says here, Ricky and Lucy had built another nest, yet another nest, that had two chicks, Moonlight and Sky. Third graders named it, and those fledged and left. So there, I guess, is Ricky with a chick, which would have been looks like Shadow. This is sort of the only known image, at least on the website for Ricky. So what happened was, they after this, Ricky and Lucy's left, right? They just left the area, and that's what's one thing about bald eagles, like they say here, nobody was banded in this group, and even including the offspring. So no bandage or tags, and there's no way to 100% to tell like what happened to them, why they left. We don't know any of that. But bald eagles mature and are able to have children, have lay eggs at 5 years old. And exactly 5 years after Jackie was born, there was an eagle, a female eagle, that appeared at the nest. And there were only three bald eagles seen year round in Big Bear, right? Bald eagles could migrate through, but all the time there were only three eagles: Ricky and Lucy, and that one subadult that was Jackie. So they think that she never left Big Bear Valley. Like they say here, other hatchlings normally venture off for a few years, but Jackie's been known to break other rules that bald eagles in general seem to follow, right? So Jackie, luckily for the camera viewers, took over the nest with a camera on it, and she had a mate who appeared from somewhere and nobody knows, and he was named Mr. B, Mr. B for Big Bear Valley. That year, they tried to have eggs, but they think that she was too young to lay eggs, and there were no eggs in 2017. 2018, which was the next year, there was Jackie had laid eggs in front of the camera, and they hatched and they had two chicks, but they were Stormy and BBB. BBB is Big Bear baby, but at 6.5 weeks old, so just before they're able to leave the nest, there was a rainstorm and that was following by freeze. Same thing that happened to Cookie happened to Stormy and Big Bear Baby BBB, and unfortunately BBB did not survive. So that is the dangerous thing for the Big Bear Valley nest is the cold, and we'll talk about that a little more. But Stormy did move on. And they say here, this is when in 2018 is when the media started looking at the camera, and in 2018 is when Jackie and Shadow sort of first became nationally known birds. Um, and Stormy survived, like I said here. Stormy was banded and left, and this was 2018, and left a couple months later. However, just as it's not in this summary, it's in other places, but sometime in 2019 or 2020, Stormy was far away from Big Bear Valley, and they found his body. So he was, I think they say over a third of younger bald eagles are killed by traffic, by cars, because they've tried to pick up roadkill on the road and get hit by a car. So as far as I understand, that might be what happened to Stormer, but he passed away in 2019, 2020. He was killed and found dead. But what happened also in 2018 was that after the Eagles left, a new a new Eagle showed up, an adult male intruder. And like they say here, he had great tenacity. He refused to leave no matter how much Jackie, Mr. B, and Stormy, so Stormy was still in the nest, trying to chase him away. So Jackie and her mate, Mr. B, they say Eagles mate for life. Well, this new guy, and his name is Shadow, but not Beta Shadow. Beta Shadow is the brother. The reason that that the current Shadow's named Shadow is that they were wondering, why is this bird so persistent on the nest? And the question was, hey, is this that what I call Beta Shadow, that sibling of Jackie's that was born here and left? And maybe he's back, and he really wants to get back to his the nest where he was born. But they determined, no, this is indeed a different eagle. It's not Jackie's brother Shadow. But they've been calling this new eagle Shadow already, and so they just stuck with the name. So Shadow is named after Jackie's brother, but is not Jackie's brother, right? So Shadow is just relentless, apparently, and there was no direct fight between him and Mr. B, but he just would not leave it alone. And Mr. B finally, just said gave up and left. And ever since then, ever since 2018, sorry, Shadow has been the mate on the nest with Jackie. Mr. B gave up and left, and then no one has ever seen him again, or no one knows what happened to them. The next year, they had eggs, laid eggs. Actually, this is late. Just looking at this because if you see here, um, Misty hatched on March 3rd this year. I'll get to Misty in a moment. Sunny hatched on March 4th, and Gizmo hatched on March 8th. And that is late if you see these dates. So what can happen is if bald eagles eggs don't make it, and they realize that it is possible that hormonally they activate um the desire to lay another clutch of eggs, and that's maybe what happened, that this was the second clutch, because that's late April 14th and 15th being born. And again, they had the third graders name it, but this is when they started having them vote on 25 names. So they were Simba and Cookie, but at 6 weeks old, again, that's tough. Cookie did not survive the rainstorm. Before that, they were banded, and so they found out that Simba fledged and left Big Bear Valley and was last seen in August of 2019. And here's a picture of Simba and Cookie when they were little. But unfortunately, just like the other eaglet, he was found in like 2019, 2020. One of those years also had been killed, probably by a car or something like that. So Simba, although left the nest, did not, is no longer alive. We know that. In 2019, uh, the eggs did not hatch. 2020, I mean, 2020, the eggs didn't hatch. And then in 2021, um, there was also nothing successful. And this is just tough. I mean, just because, oh, year after year, they lay eggs over and over again and they just don't make it. 2022, they laid two eggs. One did not hatch and one did. And the one that hatched grew up and became Spirit, and she left the nest. And there's some really cool videos about Spirit. And she was famous because people are starting to really pay attention to Jackie and Shadow. Interestingly, she's kind of adopted the egg in the nest. I mean, for weeks and weeks as they're growing up, time happened. The egg was there with her, and she wouldn't let the parents near it. She kind of just had that egg as her like security blanket or something like that, which is interesting. But Spirit now hatched and fledged, and she may still well be in the area because I'll mention it when I talk about Misty. There isn't a subadult, they call them, uh, an eagle that was there. That's not an adult, but it's the eagle that's flying around in Big Bear Valley. That's not Jackie or Shadow. Is about 3 years old. So people are pretty sure that's Spirit, and she's still around. And then again, like I mentioned, 2023 and 2024, the eggs didn't make it, right? So that's the history leading up to where we are now. Now, the uh, the three eggs were laid, and that's when I started hearing about it in the news, right? So right now it's 34,000 watching, which is a lot. But when the eggs were hatching, it was up to 100,000 people watching at the same time, and it was huge. And it was on the Los Angeles news and world news, and it was just a big deal that three eggs hatched here. One thing I did learn from this is that there's only a 50-50 chance that a given eagle's egg will hatch. So if one half times one half times one half is 1 in 8. So there's only a 1 in 8 chance that all three eggs would hatch. The first two eggs hatch close to each other, and they were chick one, chick two, and then they were hatched only 4 hours apart from each other, right? So they were laid 3 days apart. It's 3 days, and another one laid 3 days later, another one laid 3 days after that. But the first two eaglets hatched very close to each other. Gizmo, which was chick three, hatched 4 days after Sunny, and that was remarkable. There is video of Gizmo hatching, but they turns out that bald eagles could take up to 48 hours to hatch from an egg, right? They just are pushing and breaking through. They have an eye tooth on their nose that lets them crack through the shell. They have enough nutrition to survive for at least a couple days without food from the parents. But it took Gizmo 40 hours, 40, to finally break his way out of the shell. Now, the other two were already much bigger, so people were concerned about that. And Misty was the biggest and the oldest chick. She was aggressive. So bald eaglets, when they're little, do what Big Bear Valley calls bopping. They're sort of like bobbleheads, and they peck at each other. That's where the term pecking order comes from, right? And so what happens is the most dominant eagle is first in the pecking order, and so generally eats first before the others. And Misty was aggressive. She pecked Sunny a lot, enough that I was getting worried that something was going to happen here, especially with three eaglets, and this one just was really aggressive. There was a moment where Jackie was feeding the eaglets, and Jackie the Misty was actually stood up and was bopping at the mother, who was feeding them with her head. So she was like trying to dominate the mother, which was interesting, and I think would have led to issues in the nest later on. The snowstorm was coming. Jackie and Shadow fed the eaglets a lot. The day before the storm, one of the eaglets wiggled out from under Shadow and he was sitting on them and was poking his head out. And there's some cute video of that. But I think that was Misty. I think that Misty was very precocious and was just, trying to get out from under the parents. And I think that during the night of the storm, Misty wiggled out and wiggled into the windward side, where the wind was coming to, and it was cold. And when they got 2 feet of snow, now a lot of the snow blew off the sides of the nest, but um, over here on the right side of the nest, from this perspective, is where the wind was coming from. And I think Misty wiggled her way out from under Jackie and was just died of exposure. Because the next morning, on the 14th of March, um, Jackie gets up, the camera's on there, and one little head pops up looking for food. The second head pops up for food, and then no third head. And it took 2 days for people to, well, it took a day for them to spot the eaglet, which was they later named Misty. And interestingly, they removed it from the nest. There's video of it if you look for Big Bear Valley. But Shadow removed the dead eaglet 2 days later and this is live, I think, close to live. That might have been a pellet that I think that's Sunny might be kicking up. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what they do. They do that also. But Shadow grabbed the baby and brought it to the side of the nest where they put the food. They like stacking fish here, fish and coot. Coot are the local waterfowl that are black feathered. So whenever there's bad weather, snow, they seem to be better at catching coot because they're black feathers against a white background. I mean, it's a way to easily spot them, I think. Normally they catch fish, and 80% of what they eat is fish. That fish that Shadow brought before is right here. And, I can't tell if that's Sunny or Gizmo. I think that's Sunny, and there is Sunny self-feeding on the fish, which is cool because they're not going to be able to do that, obviously. Um, the Shadow brought the eagle that died, brought it to the edge of the nest. He nibbled at it a bit. My theory is that the parents want to recognize that it truly is the kid. And then an hour or two later, Jackie stood over the body and made like the eagle sounds, which I'd never seen her do before or since over anything else on the side of the nest. And then a couple hours after that, Jackie actually picked up the body, pulled some bits of it, sort of taste. I wouldn't say ate the eaglet, but tasted it. I think that's a way of sort of making sure that it is what it is. And she actually took it off the nest. It's the only time I've ever seen them take something and fly it off the nest and away. So that tells me that Jackie knew that it was an eaglet and had died because nothing comes off the nest. Everything sticks and fluff. So the fact that they took Misty off the nest tells me that they knew what it was, that third chick of theirs had died, which was unfortunate. But that being said, I think Misty would have done something to Sunny and Gizmo. Just who knows? But Misty was named after a longtime volunteer of Big Bear Valley, Friends of Big Bear Valley, who passed away in 2022 from cancer and died too young. So they couldn't ask the kids to name an eaglet that had died. So instead, they named Misty after the volunteer to give the eaglet a name and to honor their volunteers. So Misty, Sunny, and Gizmo. Now, if you go back and watch the videos, um, they're very funny. Sunny is like the calm one and the sort of level-headed one. Gizmo's a bit of the one that gets into trouble and does nutty things. With the bopping, there was some of that went on, but Gizmo, after the storm, quickly Sunny, we knew that which one was which because she was the big chick. She was very large, and Gizmo was relatively small. And when they extend their necks, I can see for 100% because Sunny has a thick neck and Gizmo has a thin neck. That's the way you can tell one way, and also by the way the beaks curve. Yeah, this curves from the top of the head, so that's definitely Gizmo. Sunny's beak curves toward her two eyes. But anyway, Gizmo, the smaller chick, and that's what they called them before they had their official names, Small Chick and Big Chick, SC and BC. Small Chick, Gizmo, would bop the big chick and would start the pecking. And Sunny, of course, didn't like that. So as soon as Gizmo landed an actual bop, Sunny immediately bopped back and hit him hard and would bop him two or three times. And then what happens is the eagles submit. They put their heads down, turn their backs, and that's the show of submission, and they stop. But it was very funny because Gizmo started every fight, Sunny ended every fight, and won every fight. The only time Gizmo kind of almost won a fight was when Gizmo was behind Sunny and off from behind, and Sunny at that point was pretty heavy in the growth cycle, so was not able to turn around and get Gizmo back. And so Gizmo kind of won that fight. That's the only time I've seen Gizmo actually win a fight. And Sunny, only once have I seen Sunny initiate bopping. Um, and that was it's all very short. And as far as the Big Bear Valley say, it's always a possibility. We don't know what these people's personalities are going to be, but they're very well fed. So the lake back here is plenty of fish, and Jackie and Shadow are very good hunters. And so normally it's a food. Well, I'll get to that in another example. But it is a food issue that they're fighting each other for food, and they want to make sure that they get the food. They're getting the pecking order. But this place is really, there's just basically, as far as the eagles are concerned, it's unlimited food. They have the crops, and I'll talk about that a little bit now. They have a bulge. So what happens is the eagle's digestive system is very interesting. Um, First of all, when they eat, they store food in a crop. It's a pouch, in their esophagus or something close to that area where they store raw meat. And basically, what eagles eat is raw meat. They eat raw meat from the day they're hatched. So the first little feedings of little baby eaglets is raw fish or whatever other food the parent has. And then they fill the crop, and then it starts going into their digestive system and their stomach area and the gizzard. And eagles have very acidic digestive systems, so they're able to eat roadkill. They're able to eat stuff that's 4 or 5 days dead, like whatever goes into them. If there's any kind of bacteria or anything like that, it gets killed immediately. Eagles are very good at pretty much eating anything that's meat. Um, so the crops will get filled up, and over time, they do what's called a crop drop, where their body uses muscles to push food from the crop down into the digestive system. And we saw that a little earlier. Sunny yawned, and that was probably a crop drop, where her body was pushing more food from her crop into her digestive system. But I was saying basically because there's so much abundant food that the eagles after a while they do the pecking order thing and just stop because there's no point. There's no concern about food. There's a lot of food. Um, let's see. Yeah, so the other neat thing with Jackie and Shadow is they have different feeding styles. The mom, Jackie, she just tears big chunks of meat off and sticks it out there, and whichever eaglet gets it, gets it. Whereas Shadow is actually, he's interesting. He tears off much smaller pieces, and he makes sure to sort of walk away around the nest when they're little, just to make sure every eaglet gets food. The Shadow seems to be the much more careful feeder, and also makes sure like he makes an effort to make sure every eaglet got fed, and also when Gizmo was smaller than Sunny, the same thing. Just looking back here, they're in the development phases, and here, so they talk give you examples of wingers. So here, so we can see, it's when they stretch or flap their wings. So we'll jump back, let's say to 6:30 on the camera. That's what's great thing about the eagle cams, right? So right now it's 1:10 in California. You jump back in time, you jump all the way back to 6:30, and you can see what happens on that log there. And it's not precise, but you get in there as best you can, and then you can use the keys on YouTube, the right arrow keys to go forward. And it goes 5 seconds ahead. There we go. And we can see, there we go. That looks like Sunny stretching the wings, and you can see she has the gray is the, the second set of down. They're born with what's called natal down, which is more brown, I think, and then they get the temperature. They can thermoregulate after 2 weeks. They grow in this down. When they're first born, they can't thermoregulate, so the parent has to sit on them to keep them warm in bad weather or at night. And then after 2 weeks, they grow in the gray down here, and they're able to regulate their body temperatures. Not They can't be wet. Being wet is bad because that way, if they can't dry off, they could be in trouble. But yeah, the that was the wingers right there. Also, Sunny is standing up on her feet, nicely. So that's a big development step. Here's Gizmo, who's younger, is less willing to stand on his feet. But from what I understand from the spreadsheet, um, there will be wingers. And of course, maximize the screen there a little bit. Um, let's see. So yeah, at some point around 6:31, right? 6:29, I think, and wingers. 6:29, 6:30. So we missed a good gizmo on there. But that's the nice thing about the spreadsheet and the EcoCams. You can see, like, 6:21, Sunny regurgitated a pellet. Oh, yeah. So that's another thing. So maybe we'll just jump back a little bit there to 6:21. Um, of course, my computer refreshes. So we're going to go back another 10 minutes. Yeah, so the eagles eat everything that the parents feed them, right? So they try to feed them meat, but of course, sometimes attached to the meat is, yeah, here we go, 6:21. So she's going to regurgitate what's called a pellet. So they eat everything, scales, bones, feathers, all those kinds of things. And the digestive system actually produces what's called pellets, which are compacted pieces of the material that's indigestible. And then the eagles do this. A little weird looking for us humans, but there, boom, it just fell out. So their digestive system packs all this indigestible stuff together, and then they just cough it out on a schedule. This is Jackie. You can see that she has that sap on her forehead that has been there since January, and nobody knows exactly what it is, but the friends of Big Bear Valley say it's nothing to worry about. And yeah, and uh, we're not worried about it. So that's Jackie and Shadow. They, like I said, right now 33,000, 34,000 watching in chat. I'm gonna jump back to live. A lot watching the stream. It's starting to clear up the weather a little bit, and they have a live chat, right? Chat is normally disabled. What happens is the next chat is at 6 p.m. Pacific time, so that's 9 p.m. Eastern time. And normally at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Pacific, they open up chat. People can ask questions, but with 33,000 people in chat, the moderators, it's hard to answer every question. And people ask the same questions that are covered here in the document and in other sources. So that's the most famous. That's Jackie and Shadow. That's what got me interested in eagleness. But uh, Sunny and Gizmo for the last month have been quite as interesting because they they just been eating, sleeping, and pooping. And they're in this growth spurt where they're physically getting big, growing the feathers, but not a whole lot's going on, right? So there are a lot of other nests. Just want to briefly touch on Northeast Florida. This is the Northeast Florida nest, and this is the bird uh, Bodie, and the father's name Bo. I can't remember what the mother's name is, but that's Bodie. She fledged last week Friday, a week ago today, Friday, and I flew then for the first time. Um, That's an interesting story. I'll just touch on briefly. Bodie was an only chick, and she grew up by herself. But there was an intruder, an eaglet that looks like he had just left his own nest. They say he because he's smaller. He's smaller than Bodhi's parents, and she's big. So she's big, as big as her mom. The intruder, who was a juvenile eagle, so they started calling him Juvie. Which Juvie is kind of a term for eaglets who are once they've left the nest. Juvie, so they called him Juvie. He kept coming around, and normally that's bad. Eagles do not let other eagles come to their nests. But Juvie, kind of like Mr. B and Shadow, he was like Shadow, where he was persistent and just wouldn't leave. So the dad tried to chase him all several times. He just would not leave. He could fly. He flew his flies in and out of the nest. But finally, the parents basically gave up and started feeding Juvie also. So they basically adopted Juvie into their family and sort of have a brother for Bodhi here. And that's a whole interesting story. I haven't been following it too closely in the Northeast Florida cam. But last week when Bodhi fled, she fell out of the nest or trying to fly, collided with Juvie, fell onto a lower branch, and then spent 8 hours working her way back up the nest and up the tree and back into the nest. That's a whole drama there. But Juvie stayed with her. He would sit on the branches nearby, and I'm not a Northeast Florida cam follower, but the people that do um, said that Julie has been just a real asset to Bodie, giving her confidence, and she copies him and things like that. So interestingly, you have the case where Juvie introduced himself to the nest and was adopted by the family, a strange eagle, which is interesting. This is the Northeast Florida camera. There is a Southwest Florida camera, and that's a tragedy there. They had two eaglets. Both of them got pretty big, got close to fledging, and something happened. I don't know if they've done any tests on the bodies, but each of the eaglets had a seizure and fell out of the nest and died. When they found them the next day on the ground, they were both dead. So one it happened to one eaglet, and a day later it happened to the second eaglet. So Southwest Florida Cam had two eaglets, but they both died, both from seizures, and there's suspicion that it was bird flu. I don't know whether they followed up on that or not, but that was a suspicion. There's the Excel Energy Fort St. Vrain. So right now, there's two right now. This is on. Let me get live. This is on private land. This is Fort St. Vrain is west of Colorado, and this is an interesting story. So they actually had four eggs, right? Which is a lot of eggs, and all four eggs hatched. These are about a week old, a little more, these eaglets, which is amazing, right? If it's a 50-50 chance that an egg hatches, the chances of four eggs hatching is, 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1 in 16. There's only 1 in 16 chance that all four eggs would hatch. Now, when these hatched, I think 2 weeks ago now, yeah, 2 weeks ago, the last couple eggs, unfortunately, it was very hot. It was over 80 degrees and the sun was beating down. And sometimes the parents stand over and provide shade. These are very experienced parents. They've had many prior years of successful eaglets and fledging and everything. So these parents normally know what they're doing. But unfortunately, the day that eaglet number four hatched, um, that it was very hot. It did get fed, but it seemed to be in distress and just from the heat, and it did pass away from heat exhaustion. The parents saw that pretty quickly. They realized that pretty quickly and covered the eaglet up with the nesting material here. Looks like that's a pellet right there for this guy. That was number 55. So I guess this is one of the oldest cameras. This got up in 2003 and has been, of course, modified since then. But the 14 Brain Excel Energy on private land camera is one of the oldest. So this is number 52. Sorry, this is 53 and 54. And then 55 was the one that passed away the day it hatched from the heat, it looks like. And unfortunately, the oldest eagle at 52, the day after 55 passed away, again, another hot day 2 weeks ago, very hot, no shade. And it was these guys are super mobile for some reason. Well, after watching the Sunny Gizmo, if you notice, they have a very small area for them to move around in, and they don't really move around much. They stick to their little small area here. Most other eagle nests have a lot of room, and here you see much more bedding material, and they're able to crawl around a lot more. So unfortunately, the day after number 55 died, number 52, which is the oldest eaglet, was crawling, looks like for shade, we don't know, and it crawled into the sticks here and it unfortunately found a slot in the sticks and fell through out of the nest. And they went and checked later that day, and the eagle had passed away. You could hear a pretty distinct thunk sound when it hit whatever's underneath the nest. So the Fort St. Vrain nest went from 4 eaglets. Unfortunately, in 24 hours, went down to 2 eaglets. So right there, they're doing well. We can see it. There's some weather there, but the parents are keeping them, protected. They're sleeping right now. When the parents roost on the eaglets, you're keeping them warm, and I think it's kind of like swaddling a baby. They go to sleep and they sleep the entire time that the parent is on them. So that's what's happening right now. Live, this is a live view of Fort St. Vrain, and they had 4 eaglets. They only have two, unfortunately, but they are doing well. Just a couple more nests. So the Trempealeau eagles. So this is an interesting nest. This is actually, if you see in the description, they are in Wisconsin. They're overlooking the Mississippi River, and they've had 2 eaglets hatch. And this is a successful, very recently, or maybe two or three, actually three. Sorry, they have 3 eaglets hatch, and this has been a experienced pair, mother and father. And if you see in this shot right here, this is the Mississippi River right there. So they have plenty of food to get. There's a train track right here, so you can hear the train rumble on through every once in a while. But the Trempealeau Eagles are doing very well. They're a live stream that's interesting, and almost 500 people watching right now. So they're the three of them. You can see by the size, this is the third one to hatch. This is the first one to hatch. But Trempealeau Eagles are doing well, and some of these have live chats, and some of them don't. Most of them do actually. Um, and then we have, just want to note, North Carolina. So you can see here they're sleeping, but there's 3 pretty big eaglets. They're younger than Sunny and Gizmo, because Sunny and Gizmo have the dark feathers coming in. But the North Carolina eagles are doing well, and this is great because and you can see the feathers are starting to come in here. Just real quick, this is an interesting nest. Um, the father on this nest is named Scout. The mother's experienced. Last year was Scout's first year with eaglets, and he was barely old enough to be a dad, and so pretty inexperienced. And my guess is he was an only eaglet. He grew up by himself on a nest because last year they laid eggs, they hatched. The first eaglet hatched. The mom was near the nest. She fed the eaglet and then flew off. And Scout came back to the nest, and this is you can find videos of this, but they say he was confused, is the way they describe it. Scott was confused and did not understand what this thing was in the nest, and apparently thought it was food that must have either fallen into his nest or brought by the other eagle, and he killed and ate the chick last year. So that was distressing, of course, to the people watching on the Eagle camera. If you notice, there's no chat for this live stream. I'm not sure if that's why. Probably because this is actually an official U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service camera, so that's owned by the government, and so they might have maybe the reason why they don't allow chat. But Scout, unfortunately, their chicks did not make it last year. But this year, they had 3 that hatched. They're pretty big, and obviously Scout left them alone and been a good dad. So this is the North Carolina nest, NCTC. Finally, the last bald eagle nest I want to talk about is Kisatchie. So this is the Kisatchie National Forest, and this is O3, E3O3. They don't name the eaglets here anymore, or never. They did. They did the last ones that hatched. But this is, I'll talk about it another time, maybe on my next video. But this is the famous KNF, the Kisatchie National Forest nest. I heard about it because of the events of March 20th. So it's Eagle Nest 3. Eagle Nest 1 has a camera, no eagles this year. Eagle Nest 2, also in Kisatchie National Forest. This is Louisiana. Eagle Nest 2, they put this camera that's pointing at 3 right now. 2 was put on, sorry, this camera was put on nest number 2. And unfortunately, shortly after that, someone shot and killed both eagles on that nest. Both eagles were found floating in the lake right there as Kincaid Reservoir. And so somebody killed both eagles by shooting them. And no eagles have gone back to that nest and used it ever since. I don't know if they know what happened to the other pair or what, but nest 2 has been abandoned. And after that, the forest. This is also a Forest Service uh, run camera, although the website, the YouTube channel is run by something else, by volunteers in Alexandria, Louisiana, which is close by. But this camera has been pointing at this nest for a while. Um, Nest one, it's Lewis and Anna, because this is Louisiana, so they named it Lewis and Anna. Anna passed away. That's a whole story for another time. And Lewis left the nest, so there is another pair that is trying to claim the nest, and they are Lewis the second and Anna the second, because this is a National Forest Service nest that they did have naming contests, but it took so much of their time, and it's all they don't pay for that. That they decided once they named the eaglets, sorry, the parents on the nest, that's it. And this is the second nest. This is well, the third nest. The second nest is abandoned. But this pair is called Alex and Andrea because Alexandria, Louisiana is the closest city to here, which is, I think, a great name um, for the Eagles. They did find a fourth nest, which just a month ago, just last month, they found a fourth nest. So if they do name those, if they do put a camera on there, which I hope they do, and if they do name those parents, this is Rapides Parish in Louisiana. So my vote is for Rap for the dad and Edis for the mom, but we'll see what they do. But this is the second pair of Alex and Andrea on the nest. Now, this is the famous nest. I'll talk about that next time. But what happened was brand new parents laid the eggs, both eggs hatched. This is offspring number three, so he's O3. His full name is E3O3 130 2025. And his sibling was E304 2025. Something happened, and I'll talk about this more in my next recording of the bald eagles. But something happened where the parents stopped bringing food to the nest, and the eagles went into starvation. And of course everyone was distressed. People were upset about it, but the watchers think that there was a threat to the nest, and the hormones of the parents switch from feeding their young to defending the nest. I guess it's more important to defend the nest, and you might lose the young than to die feeding them from whatever threat materialize. So these two were starving. O3 and O4, and O3 is very hungry guy. I think it's a male, and unfortunately, on March 19th, well, O3 always got the food and blocked O4 from getting food. And on March 19th, O3 pretty viciously attacked O4 and bit him on the back of the neck for quite some time. And O4 never really recovered from that, laid down and passed away on March 20th. And that's why it says there will be no interventions, because a lot of people, of course, were upset that the cameras had that. And O4 died in the nest. And again, this was a starvation time, so the parents came and stripped the meat off O4 and fed it to O3. And then the parents ate O4's bones, completely consumed them. So, and which is a wild story. Fortunately, after that, toward the end of March, that's when I started watching this nest, March 20th, after O4 died. Um, I fortunately things picked up, things turned around completely. Alex the second and Andrea the second have been bringing fish to O3 here. And next time I talk about this, I'm going to talk about O3 because this guy's hilarious. The funniest. I mean, it's my first year watching eaglet nests. Sonny Gizmo are great, but like I said, right now they're in a phase where they're just sleeping, eating, and growing, which is cool. But the adventures of O3 on the Kasachi nest are just something that I'll talk about next time. That's my time for today. This is Christoph. People ask you if it's a true story. You can tell them, well, it's true, it's a story. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk more next time about the KNF Kasachi nest and our friend O3. Thank you. Bye bye.